As modern environmental awareness grew in the 1960s, business was often viewed as the enemy. But conservation pioneer Patrick Noonan saw things differently. His visionary leadership in creating innovative partnerships framed a new conservation future. His efforts protected millions of acres and thousands of miles of waterways across the U.S., and he inspired a new generation of conservation leaders.
As Rachel Carson was the first to link human health and the environment, Pat was the first person to link up business and conservation.
You combine those two, ecology and business, in a sustainable vision, and you're taking the two most powerful motivators we have in this country, the free enterprise system and science, good science.
When, at age 29, Pat became president of the Nature Conservancy, it had just 15 employees. Under his leadership, the organization and the scale of its work quickly grew. He helped pioneer new public-private conservation partnerships that protected incredible ecosystems. In 1973, in a game-changing victory, Pat helped persuade the Union Camp Timber Company to donate 50,000 acres of the Great Dismal Swamp in Virginia and North Carolina to create a national wildlife refuge. It protected an ecoregion supporting more than 200 bird species.
Pat explained first the importance of the Great Dismal Swamp. I had done some background. I found that the Fish and Wildlife Service really wanted it as a national wildlife refuge because it is a crossing point of literally hundreds of thousands, if not millions, of birds.
From Northern California's forests to Virginia's James River, from the working ranches of Wyoming to farms in Indiana, he achieved conservation on a whole new scale.
The list is so long that it's not possible within the moments we have together to describe to you what was acquired during his presidency. All I can say is his ability to attract brilliant young men and women to work with him and for him may be the hallmark of Patrick Noonan's presidency of the Conservancy.
He would get charged up every time he knew he had protected something. I mean, he was just absolutely totally focused on that.
Pat realized that effective conservation meant protecting entire ecosystems, from pristine natural habitat to working lands, just as Audubon does today. In 1980, he teamed with Peggy Rockefeller to form the American Farmland Trust.
My grandmother, Peggy Rockefeller, joined the board of the Nature Conservancy sometime in the early 1980s.
Peggy called one day and she asked me if I would help her set up a new organization when I come to New York. And we talked about farmland and the need for farmland preservation.
So she presented this proposal to the board saying, look, if you all want to address the environmental problems in this country, you cannot ignore the working lands because almost half of the land base in the U.S. is in farms and ranches. And Granny and Pat were sort of two peas in a pod because they were both so passionate about these issues.
That passion has helped to preserve and protect more than 5 million acres of farmland since. But it was just the beginning. In 1985, Pat founded the Conservation Fund to expand on his land acquisition principles with far-reaching results.
In this country, we lose almost 1.5 million acres of forest each and every year. In 1999, these companies like International Paper and Georgia Pacific started to sell off their land. One company that Pat was particularly close to owned 300,000 acres of working forest across the Northeast. Pat decided it was time to change the game, and the Conservation Fund stepped up and put $90 million into the ground to buy 300,000 acres. It remains the largest multi-state conservation project in the history of the United States.
Looking to what other tools could deliver for conservation, Pat helped uncover another pressing need.
And so we did a survey of the major conservation groups and the local land trust and identified a huge gap in terms of leadership training. And we began to think about a training center. And from that, this wonderful NCTC, the National Conservation Center, was created. And if you go there today, you'll find business executives there, you'll find environmental leadership, you'll find conservationists, you'll all coming together in a common agenda to learn about new tools and techniques together. But we owe a great debt of gratitude to Bob Putz, who's since passed away, and John Turner, who made that center a reality.
Pat is forever giving everybody else the credit for work that he himself, 1, inspired, 2, carried through on, 3, saw to completion.
Pat's crowning achievement may be the creation of a National Historic Water Trail, which traces the 3,000-mile journey Captain John Smith made around Chesapeake Bay and its tributaries more than 400 years ago. It was through the partnerships forged by Pat that in 2006, Congress voted to create the Captain John Smith National Historic Trail.
Patrick Noonan, every time I see you, you have another project in hand, and I keep them coming.
That blue trail is an example and a set for what else can be done, and is already being done in terms of establishing similar trails, water trails, throughout the country. But that was Pat Noonan's baby, and that was his driver.
Proving that capitalism and conservation can work together, creating some of the globe's most effective conservation programs, and mentoring generations of leaders. For that, we will be thanking Patrick Noonan for generations to come.